Good morning. It's good to have you join us on Nigeria Now, showing on your digital first Pan-African news network, TOS Television. My name is Merciful Ajinomo, and joining me in the studio this time to analyze some stories is Adebayo Fajimi. You're welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
Good. We have a couple of stories this morning, of course, on the front pages of the newspapers. But let's begin with the Daily Times newspaper. The banner headline there talks about more crisis in APC as youths, Buni committee disagree over February convention. We have two writers. The first, youth group sacks Buni-led CECPC, inaugurates new caretaker committee. And the second rider, purported group membership unknown to APC, says Buni-led CECPC. Before now, we've observed what has been happening in APC, especially this year, and their plans for their convention, which they have postponed. And now it's in February next year, and now we're seeing this sort of headlines. What do you make of this party and their readiness for the general elections?
Well, when a party, especially in our own context, when a party is planning for something like this, so it is a norm that there will be dissenting voices here and there. And I do not forget APC, just like the PDP, has factions, and there are grievances in fact, I can tell you categorically that problems of 4 years ago is still unresolved in the APC. And so many gladiators, big wigs in the party, usually leverage on a time like this, to make their position known, to really show that, there is still problem in the party. So when you see a youth progressive movement in the party, coming up and saying they are sacking, the caretaker committee of the party, that tells you that, something is really, really wrong with the party. So I just believe that the APC should try as much as possible to put their house in order, because just yesterday, former Governor of Borno State Alimodo Sheriff also made his own position on that. Even the presidents and not even the governors elected under the platform of the APC have the right to decide when the convention will hold. So there has been dissenting voices here and there, ahead of the convention. So all is not well. But I think the likes of Asiwaju Bola Tinubu, Chimbisi Akande, and other biggest who are founding fathers of the party will not sleep and see things going wrong like this. I'm very sure that they will come up and see what they can do to ensure that, because if it's not going to tell well on them if they are still alive, or if they are still alive and something like this is happening, or after the administration of President Muhammadu Buhari and the party collapse. So I'm very sure that they will do what they can do to ensure that the party do not collapse.
Okay. Still on the Daily Times newspaper there, from the very top, we say Ngigi says federal government to decide on hazard allowance for health workers next week. And that story can be found on page 2 of the Daily Times. Underneath all of these stories, we see insecurity, federal government making frantic effort to tackle security challenges. That's coming from Omar Agege. Sheath your sword, Ngige appeals to Anambra APC warring members. And then on business, First Bank moves to explore opportunities in non-oil export. That story can be found on page 3 of the Daily Times. Consider consequences of your actions, Orji Kalu tells Nnamdi Kanu. We can get that on page 3 of the Daily Times newspaper. On the business day there, we see from the side right there, Omicron variant spells trouble on Nigeria's slow COVID-19 vaccine rollout. We can get that story on page 30 of the business day. And Nigerian fintechs walk tightrope after record funding, and that can be found on page 2 of the business day. Now, we've seen MTN to give investors 1 share for every 20 bought. All of that can be found on the business day newspaper. On the Blueprint newspaper, the banner headline there says factional APC caretaker committee imposters. That's coming from Akpanudo Dehe. And we have a couple of riders there. They are sponsored by opposition. Fifth columnist says so. Splinter Group fixes convention for February 26. Don't derail Buni-led committee, Saliu Mustafa warns. Buhari APC governors can't fix convention date. That's coming from Sharif. And party denies zoning chairmanship to North Central. That can be found on page 6 of the Blueprint newspaper. And then we see something on Jos jailbreak. Attacker prison official, 9 inmates shot dead. The rider there says 262 on the run. That can be found on page 15. A couple of hours ago, should we say yesterday or some days before, we saw the attack that happened in Plateau State. What do you make of this attack and the people who have escaped even till now?
Yeah, it is a recurrent issue. I think a couple of weeks ago, the Minister of Interior, Rauf Aregbesola, has made a statement that the federal government is on top, of its game to ensure that, they contain this incessant attack. So it is not a good thing, because if you look at it recently, it is now becoming a norm. Attack, on correctional service today, attack tomorrow, and all of that. So I think government need to be decisive and be very proactive enough, because telling us that you are doing something is not enough. We need to see, very quickly, the measure or the approach or the strategy you want to put in place to ensure that this is cured. I mean, this is cured. Do you understand? So it is not a good thing, because if people can just determine and just wake up one day and just say, okay, we want to go and attack correctional service, kill security people there and just free him. So that tells us that, all is nowhere. So what the government needs to do, especially Ralph Aregbesola, we know him to be a man of action, but telling us that this is what we are planning to do, planning is not enough. Execution is what really matters, and that is what we are expecting them to do as soon as possible.
Okay, as soon as possible, you said. On page 5 of the Blueprint newspaper, there we see women to court. Daughter belongs to my loving, not pastor, husband. We can get out on page 5. And then bandits demand 3 bags to release 3 Zaria local government staffers. That can be found on page 7. And then NDIC pays 108.3 billion liquidation dividends to depositors. That can be found on page 22. Talking about COVID-19 Omicron, Africa fumes as EU, US, others impose travel bans. And of course, all of the stories can be found on the Blueprint newspaper. From the very top there, we see Twitter surrenders, agrees to federal government terms. We can get that on page 5 of the Blueprint. Ignore Igbo elders, request for Nnamdi Kanu's release, NEF tells Buhari. Ignore Igbo elders' request for Nnamdi Kanu's release, NEF tells Buhari. Cautions on labeling all Fulani terrorists, and says fuel price increase will worsen economic woes. All of this story can be found on page 6 of the Blueprint newspaper. And then RMRDC working to save Nigeria over $200 million US from starch importation. That can be found on page 18. And now the Nigerian News Direct banner headline there says APC National Convention controversy trails chairmanship slot. Of course, we've talked about this story, and then we have a couple of riders there. All of that can be found on page 2 of the Nigerian News Direct. COVID-19 Ogun tops other states in mass vaccination. That can be found on page 12 of the Nigerian News Direct newspaper. And then Amici says transportation key for realizing AFCFTA objectives. On page 21, KDSG to begin 4-day working week from December 1st. CBN introduces e-form for non-commercial export, charges 5,000 naira. And then we see something, businesswomen excrete 80 pellets of cocaine at Abuja airport. This story can be found on page 13 of the Nigerian News Direct. On the Daily Trust, COVID-19 last minute rush as federal government bars unvaccinated workers tomorrow. 3 riders the first. Government reviews travels, airports on alert over Omicron variant. We should resist unscientific travel restrictions. That's coming from President of South Africa, Ramaphosa. AFDB suspends investment forum. WHO raises fresh alarm. All of this story can be found on page 5 of the Daily Trust newspaper. And then just prison attack, 11 killed, 252 inmates escape. Kano bride dies on wedding day. We can get that on page 24 of the Daily Trust newspaper. And then we see a report, security agents killed 13,241 Nigerians extrajudicially in 10 years. And then you can get it on page 8. And Mangal rakes in 11.8 billion naira. Exit Owando. That can be found on page 18 of the Daily Trust newspaper. Don't forget that you can also grab all these newspapers and stay updated on happenings from across Nigeria. And of course, our website is right there for you to stay updated, of course, on happenings in Nigeria and, of course, Africa as always. And you can also follow us across all our social media platforms at TOS TV Network on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And our website is right there for you to stay updated. And our YouTube channel is also there, so you can like and subscribe so you don't miss out on amazing videos and happenings across your area. Again, it's Nigeria Now, and thank you so much for joining us on this episode. My name is Merciful Ajinomo. See you tomorrow.